Welcome to the Divorce to Dynamite podcast. I'm Michelle O'Neill. Today, our topic is called It's All Just Mickey Mouse. So, my mother, her name was Sandy May, and I wish you all could have met her. She was a mess. She was a live wire mess. And she had all of these, I guess you would say, just, her own little pieces of wisdom. I love sharing her pieces of wisdom with you because they're really unique and they really have all of their own little stories from my childhood that go with them that I think have, kind of made me who I am. And a lot of them I have compiled into a book called Wisdom from Mama that's available on Amazon. So I remember specifically there was this one day I was in junior high, and there was this girl. I think her name was Christy, but honestly it's been a long time, so I can't really exactly remember. But we'll go with Christy for now. So I remember this girl named Christy, and she had this thing for me. I mean, she just did not like me. And every time I would pass her in the hallway, she would pull my hair or elbow me or threaten me or threaten to physically harm me. She would occasionally walk by and push me into the locker. It was just a terrible situation. And, it wasn't rising to the level at the time where anybody would do anything about it. And I was upset, troubled, junior high age. I mean, everything is troubling. Everything is, a terrible problem. I mean, it's the worst problem you've ever had in your life in junior high. And I would go home and complain to my mother about it. The school wouldn't do anything about it. The teachers wouldn't do anything about it because, of course, nobody would see it. She would do it where people wouldn't see what was happening. And my mother would tell me, it's all just Mickey Mouse. And at the time, I whatever, roll my eyes, whatever. And I didn't really understand what she meant. And, the problem kind of escalated and kind of escalated. And my mother finally sat me down and she said, look, it's all just Mickey Mouse. And I said, Mama, I don't know what you mean by that. And she said, you have to think about what's going on with this girl. We don't know what's going on with this girl. She may be being hurt at home and all she knows is to hurt somebody else. She may have some problems in her life that you know nothing about. And for whatever reason, she's picked you to pick on. And she's bullying you. And as long as you haven't done anything to deserve it, and as long as she's not really physically harming you, then you need to give her grace and pray for her and show her love and appreciation in return. And Mama suggested, when she would tell me these Mickey Mouse things, she would always give me a couple of strategies to implement. So, she would say, give her a kind word, pay her a compliment, find something nice to say to her when she would be mean to me. And so I tried to implement this strategy, and eventually this gal went on about her way, and maybe she was picking on somebody else or something, but she eventually left me alone. And as my life went on, my mom would always kind of, in response to problems that throughout young people life, were the biggest problem ever, my mom would always say, it's all just Mickey Mouse. And that would be kind of her shorthand version of that's a small problem. Throughout my life, throughout my mother's life, she always wore a Mickey Mouse watch. And you notice I have on a Mickey Mouse sort of Swatch watch, I guess. This is a Disney brand watch, and it has Mickey Mouse in it. And she always, throughout her life, wore a Mickey Mouse watch. It was never an expensive watch. My mother wasn't into expensive things. She always wore, a Mickey Mouse watch. It was important to her because it was her reminder that all the problems, what now I think young people call them first world problems, that those problems were all just Mickey Mouse. In other words, to Mama, the problems that we think on a daily basis in the moment are a big dang deal are probably just not really that big of a deal. And what she was really trying to say is that you have to have perspective. Mama was trying to give me perspective. And in my mama's way, in the Sandy May way, she would give me a lesson in a memorable way that I would never in my life forget. Here I am 56 years later, and I'm teaching you the memorable lesson that my mama taught me about perspective in a way that is so memorable that you'll never forget it. And so, when you're talking about perspective, right, you have to think about broadening out to the bigger picture, because when you have one of these problems, whether you're junior high age, whether you're going through a divorce, whether you're going through a life transition, career change, empty nest, whatever the transition is, you think in that moment, oh my gosh, I just got fired from my job. Oh my gosh, I broke my foot. Oh my gosh, whatever the problem is. You think in that moment like it's the biggest problem you've ever had, and how am I going to get past it? But when you zoom out, when you broaden your perspective to see that in the grand scheme of things, this problem that in the myopic, you think is this gigantic problem, in 5 years, you may not even remember you had the problem. And secondly, when you look at the perspective, you have to think about, is this a problem that is in my control, or is it a problem that is out of my control? Or is there something that I can do to influence the problem? So when I would have one of these problems and Mama would give me this advice, she would always give me some strategies for dealing with the problem. So like with the little bully girl in junior high, she would tell me what I could do, show grace. What I could do, give her a compliment. What I could do, say something nice to her. What could I do to change the scenario, influence the scenario, take myself out of the scenario? She did the same thing to me throughout my life, as we would have these types of conversations about problems that I thought were big problems that she would say were small problems. For example, one time I was in college and I made my first C ever in the history of ever in an accounting class. And I was devastated. I mean, I was never a C student. I had always had the easy way because I was smart and diligent and studied hard, and school came easy for me. And then I got in college, and this one class, accounting, wasn't easy. And her advice, whenever I thought this was the end of the world, was, number one, well, let's put this in perspective. I guess you're not going to be an accountant, are you? And throughout my life, that advice has stuck with me, that there is a need for good accountants in the world, and I'm not one of those. The other piece of advice she gave me was that, next time I have struggles with a class, that maybe I need to implement some different study habits, maybe implementing going to the professor earlier in the course to get some advice or get some extra help might have made a difference in the grade. And so she would always give me these strategies for how I could change the outcome of the problem so that I would learn something about how to deal with the problem. And then the third thing I think we learn about perspective from the Mickey Mouse problems is to practice the gratitude and the positive reframing. So in the example that I just gave you about my C in accounting, Mama reframed that to say, well, I guess we learned that there's a need for good accountants in the world, and you're not one of them. And that's absolutely true, because I learned that I was going to appreciate and show gratitude for the good accountants in my life. And I learned that I was not going to be an accountant. We could check that off the list of possible jobs that I might be going to have in the future. The Mickey Mouse concept, when Mama used that as the analogy for these small problems, what she was saying is that Mickey Mouse is a cartoon. Mickey Mouse was a cartoon that, in the grand scheme of television, you weren't going to take seriously. It was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be lighthearted. It was supposed to be something that was enjoyable for the moment, but 5 years later, you may or may not even remember the cartoon. It was not supposed to be some heavy movie with some deep, meaningful message in it that 5 years from now, you're going to say, I learned this great life lesson from this really impactful movie, right? And so the same thing applies when you've got problems. If it's a problem that in 5 years is still going to be a memorable life lesson kind of problem that you learn things from, then that's a different kind of problem, right? But in 5 years, if this problem isn't going to matter, then you shouldn't give it 5 minutes, because it's all just Mickey Mouse.